Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have an extra special guest. A few announcements up front. Hey, are you watching this and you're new to the channel? Why don't you hop on over to YouTube and subscribe? It does a heck of a lot for the channel. Give it a thumbs up. People are going to like it. For all of you on X, if you want to take place in the comments, I will be able to see you, but the other viewers on YouTube will not. So mosey on over if you can, or just hang out on X and I'll see what you're posting. Uh, Tomorrow at a very special 3 p.m. in the afternoon time, we have Ed Jowett of Shades of Vengeance. He's going to be talking about a crowdfunder for a new tabletop role playing game called Ninja Sharks, where ninjas fight to save humans from the robots who have imprisoned them. Because everybody know humans taste better when they're free range. And Friday, an extra early time, 7 p.m. I've got Dying Breed on from Nerd Cognito's Speak Easy. We're going to be talking old school gaming, new school gaming, and snacks. What snack goes best with gaming? But tonight, I have an extra special guest, the king of indie comics, the king of cryptids, and the prince of pizza, Peter Simeti.
The Prince of Pizza. All right.
You're expanding your domain.
Sounds good to me. I have pizza for dinner.
I had it for lunch in your
All
honor.
right. Yeah. Nice. Nice.
So it's been a while since you've been on. Recently, Alterna started shipping out the King Cryptids issue 5 to 9, I believe.
Mine's reversed. So you must have got like the special variant.
What? Maybe I did.
Is your camera mirrored?
Oh, it is, yes. I have to do that because if I point to my right, like I need to see myself pointing to the right of the screen, or it just
okay.
it just screws me up mentally.
I hear you.
But yes, imagine this, except mirrored. And it's pretty awesome. So how's the reception been?
There you go.
Nice.
It's been good. People have been sending some very kind messages about it, really liking it. A lot of people actually saying they like them better than the first four, and they really liked the first four. So it wasn't like, well, the first four were garbage. You actually did something good this time, Pete. They actually liked the first four a lot and really enjoyed these even more. And I think they probably did because there's just more going on. There's more world building, character building. We get a little bit more information about what's going on with King Cryptid, hints at his past. We get more personality out of him too. So I think that's probably why these are maybe more enjoyable even than the first four. And hopefully, that's kind of the goal. You want to make the next issue better than the ones before it. I don't think anyone out there is actively going, well, the next one, I want to make it worse. I want people to enjoy this next one a lot less than the one that I just made, and so I'm actively anyway trying to one up myself, so 10 to 13, which is currently funding. I'm really hoping that people like those even more. And if I do my job right, hopefully they will.
Yeah, I think too. One of the nice things is when you start off, you always have a ton of world building you have to get through, and once you get through that, you can start building on that and actually getting a little bit more into the story. So I think I liked them a little bit better too. Okay, now I kind of know who the players are. I don't know much about them.
Yeah,
but
you get to settle in a little bit more, you kind of and I can play up reader sympathies and expectations a bit more too, because especially with characters, like they've seen before. But when it comes to King Cryptid, people are going to have more of an idea of how he would react in a certain way. So that's to my benefit also, to kind of, tell the different stories that maybe sometimes he like it's a raw nerve, something happens and he loses it. Or maybe sometimes you'd think he would lose it and he's kind of acting really cold about it. So you get a chance to build in some layers that make sense with the story. But that's the fun part for me, is that I get to add new characters, new locations. The world building, it takes place on our world on Earth. So, I don't have to spend too much time coming up with a lot of like fantastical settings and places and whatnot. But even though I don't have to really do that, it does become a little bit like, okay, well, let me see geographically where I can place certain things and have certain cryptids, certain people, certain events, and tie those into maybe even historical events, paranormal history. So King Cryptid, especially as the series goes on, kind of starts to take on a little bit of a historical fiction spin to it. And I hope people are there for that too.
Speaking of historical, I very much remember when the was his name, the old man of
Old
the
Man of the
mountain.
Mountain, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when he fell off. So now we know what happened.
Exactly. Yeah. You get it straight in issue 6 of the events of that.
And I like the variety of artists you have too. One of my favorites, Frankie B. Washington, who, in my opinion, Frankie B. goes with cryptids and kaiju like peanut butter goes with jelly. So it was nice to see him back.
Yeah, he did a good job with that issue.
Um, so now that you're getting feedback, you got feedback from 1 through 4, starting to get feedback from 5 to 9. How does that shape your process going forward? Because I know you said at one point you told me you probably have ideas already for like 100 issues. So how do you sort of incorporate the things that are really resonating with people with your pre-made plans, so to speak?
I mean, it's really tough to try to make something that resonates with anybody. I try to make things first about the story and the characters, and then if it resonates with someone, it resonates. Like I see Dale in the chat. He had said that the Old Man in the Mountain story might be his favorite so far. It's always funny because every single time I hear like the first 4 issues, there's like issue 1 is my favorite, issue 2 is my favorite, issue 3. Everyone has their own different favorite issue, and so you never really know when something's going to resonate with someone, when a certain plot point or a character is going to hit them in a certain way. So I just try to do my best with coming up with the characters that not just make sense for the story I want to tell, but that the characters are the characterization is strong enough that the stories kind of tell themselves. So that's my biggest goal, is like I really come up with characters first, and then from the characters I start thinking of the setting, the locations involved, what kind of plot is going to unfold from that, and then how the interaction with King Cryptid goes down. So that's where a lot of that comes from. But I never really plan on having these things resonate with people. I just sort of hope that that's the end result, is that it does. But you never know. You put this stuff out there, and maybe like one of my favorite characters might not be one of their favorite characters. So it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things. But I love that part of it. I don't like when going in there and saying, well, I want the audience to feel this way about this character and like this one and not like that one. And I know some creators that do that, and I think they kind of set themselves up to get jaded by it or resentful of the audience because of that. And for me, it's more just like, hey, I'm creating all these guys to just tell this story the best that I can. And if you relate to one, if you like one, if you don't like one, whatever it may be, that's how it goes. It's not up to me. Once the audience gets it, once the readers get it, they get to decide what they like about these characters or don't like about these characters. So it's helpful though when they do really like a certain character, because then I'm like, okay, good, I can do a little more with this one. Don't do too much, but I could do a little bit more with this one.
Um, we have Kanak who asks, do artists media get faster feedback than other printed creations?
Uh, I mean, I'm gonna try to see. I don't know exactly. Let me see. Do artist media get faster feedback than other printed creations? I mean, like, does the art get faster feedback? I'm guessing is the question. I think so, just because it's the visual impact of it.
Mm,
You know, it's like you can't really get instant feedback on the writing. You
yeah.
know, even if you can get instant feedback on like a panel or a sentence that you put together or something, if it hits or doesn't hit, or really just someone goes, "What the hell are you saying there?" But in terms of the story, the plot, the characterization, there's nothing instantaneous about that. You got to let that play out. But the art, definitely, you see it, and it speaks to you or it doesn't speak to you. And I think that's a big strong point for the visual medium of comics.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that, too, comics traditionally, I think has faster, how would you say? The fan feedback is faster than other printed media, because traditionally every month you'd be getting letters on something or another. So whereas if you were working in TV and you produced the show, you made the show, it might be months before that show comes out, and
Oh
you might
yeah,
have
yeah.
already shot like 10 more episodes of the thing before you start getting feedback, like on episodes 1 and 2. And if you're writing a book, a novel, let's say, um, you're not going to find out if people actually thought the butler did it until like 3 or 4 years when the next issue comes out. So I do think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there is more of an immediacy, um, certainly in comics than in a lot of other medium.
I mean, nowadays it seems like there's an immediacy on all kinds of feedback just because of the
Yeah,
instantaneous nature of social media. You know, I'm sure that it was a lot different when there wasn't such a thing.
yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah, I've definitely noticed, like, especially if you share. Like, I love sharing pages and art and whatnot, but way before we even go to print. You know, nothing spoilery or too spoilery anyway. But you get a chance to kind of gauge the audience on what they're thinking about certain things. But you kind of play with fire with that too,
Hmm.
depending on the mentality you have, because uh, I'm not really like this, but if you're prone to being too sensitive to the feedback, like they love it or they hate it or whatever it might be, and you really have your heart set on telling that story that way, and it needs to be told that way, that's how you envision it. And if something is like, you show a snippet of something and it doesn't give away the whole thing, but someone's like, that's really stupid. Like, that looks bad. This doesn't sound right. This doesn't make any sense. So you really have to be careful with putting that out there and understanding, okay, you're only giving people like a tip of the iceberg. You got to be confident enough to see it through. And then the other part of it is, if you're making a mistake and it's a big red flag, you have to also know, maybe you put that out there and someone's like, oh, hey, you want to really take a look at that. You gotta reword that, or, that character, that name on that character already is out there, or it looks just like this other character. So you really gotta, and I think it comes with time, but you gotta know when to be discerning on all this stuff, because otherwise you live and die with this praise and criticism, and it can really mess you up with what story you want to tell, and start really intimidating how you approach telling these stories. You could end up abandoning complete plot lines that might be great after 3 or 4 issues down the line, but you go, oh man, like, they didn't really take it right away. But it's like, you gotta have confidence in how the story's gonna play out.
Do you think too that sort of the new immediacy of social media, internet, whatnot, there are less thoughtful uh, comments? So, for example, like people are just sort of like shooting on the hip. The first thing they see is what they're gonna uh, send it with, instead of like thinking a little bit, giving it a little time to digest.
I've seen that happen with others, but I've been fortunate enough so far that that hasn't really happened with me. Um, So yeah, I mean, I've seen it, and I think we're all kind of prone to it. Sometimes I can't tell if it's engagement bait, where someone posts something up and you're like,
Hmm.
that's just begging for people to point out how horrible that is, or whatever. And I don't really post stuff that's like engagement bait in that respect. I'm not trying to troll the audience with anything that I show. I'm trying to be sincere. And so I haven't really experienced anything like that I'm like, well, that person really they just kind of, word vomited their response. I usually get stuff if it is like a short and quick response, it's usually something positive. And when something is a critique or feedback to help, it's generally pretty thought out. So, it's a nice conversation with it. And I had like two or three of those kinds of conversations on the first four issues. And, I'll probably have more even as we go on. So I haven't had any of that yet. But yeah, I've definitely seen it. I've definitely seen it where I'm like, oh, yeah, guys, just calm down a little bit. It'll be okay.
Um, so Al wonders, I'm curious if Pete uses an editor to help him tighten stories.
My writing editing process is a little unorthodox, I guess, but if I had to say I use an editor, it'd be like the unsung hero of my wife. She's got a master's degree in English, so I'm
Oh,
blessed
nice.
to have that lying around to just be like, you think about this, And I'm always talking about the characters and the stories and whatnot. And there'll be some moments she's like, "Oh, it's better if you don't put that part in, or it's better if you, dive into that a bit more." But it's nothing too technical. And I've kind of learned a lot from her and her assessment of things. And then I've also learned a lot just from all the different stories I've helped out over the years as kind of the unseen, uncredited editor feedback person. So I'm not precious about going into my stuff and saying like, okay, this has to be changed. That has to. I always take like maybe, So I'll explain my scripting process for those that don't know. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. So when I script something out, I'm giving it to the artist and I'm giving them the story and the scene by scene breakdown. So I'm just telling them the story, and I want them to visualize how they want to place it. I'm not giving them like hard dialogue and captions and camera angles and how many panels and all that stuff. I'm just explaining the story. And I offer the scripts on my campaign too, so people can see my weird unorthodox scripts that are more just like reading the storybook. And now things will kind of evolve through that process. If I have a very specific moment, I'll let the artist know. I'll even hint at dialogue and how the emotion should play out with a certain character so we can maximize it. But other than that, the artist gets like 80 to 85% visual creative freedom. And then it's just about them giving me the thumbnails, the pencils, all that. We do approval process through the stages of it. And then when I go in there and letter everything, because I'm blessed with that too. I'm lucky that I'm lettering and writing and editing and all that, because I don't have to hand it off to a letterer. So if I see that the artist did something great, I can actually go in there and say, okay, instead of, I thought I would put some more whatever, writing in here, but I don't really have to do that as much. Or the opposite, the visuals are really great. I could put something to juxtapose that. So I can put some writing and captions and whatever to either describe or punch up or tell a different side of the story or whatever. So my process, it doesn't end until it goes to the printer and it's finalized at that point. And even then I'll still see stuff and I'm like, oh, I should have said that instead. But it's printed now, so what are you going to do? But that's the thing, is that you got to eventually stop. And along the way, when I'm doing these various stages of things, I have enough time. I can kind of sit there and take a breather to go, okay, I'll tweak that. If I was under the gun of like a constant monthly kind of a deadline type of situation, it would definitely, I would need someone to get in there and like right away be able to be on top of me about that. But it's I recommend it all the time. There's people that get stuck in a rut with certain things.
Hmm.
Take a breather, get away from that for a day or two or whatever, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. You don't want to just sit there and and try to go, okay, I got to make this work. I got to make this work. What do I do? You're just going to get more and more frustrated with it, and it's going to get worse and worse.
Yeah, I agree. So I do have one question though. Get an editor has kind of been like things that I have said to a lot of people doing indie products over the years, especially when they're in the beginning stages. But my only caveat to that seems to be when people get an editor, it's always a literary editor, and they totally ignore the art editor.
Yeah.
Whereas, like,
Oh yeah,
I'll
if you
see,
get a comic editor, yeah, you really
yeah,
need to have someone who understands the visual language of comics.
yeah, I've seen like a lot of stuff that people have asked me about, and like, well, here his legs are kind of together. He looks a little effeminate, but he's supposed to be your world Superman. So it's like it's playing at odds with the words that you've written. So
Yeah, even
that's
just the flow of the panels and the
yeah,
composition and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like art director, editor when it comes to that with the artists. And then, there's always something that if it looks like I need to get a second opinion, I got a couple people I can turn to and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But most of the time it is, and it's absolutely true. You do need, if you're going to get a comic editor, you do need someone who understands the visual language of comics. You can't just get someone who's a straight up like novel
yeah.
editor. It's going to be a very different treatment. I do want to say though, with the Canic One
Mhm.
giving me a critique here on how I talk, says I'd recommend wife supports my career by contributing her skills to final product instead of the
Well,
my lackadaisical. I'm lucky I got my life, my wife lying around to edit my stuff. It's turn of phrase, Canic One.
uh, yeah. Uh, so I did have a question though. So if we let me switch views here. So if we take a look at the art, um, we have a lot of radically different styles of art going on between these four books, which in a lot of ways makes King Cryptid fairly unique. Um, because it's almost the way it plays out is almost like there are sort of sub stories within each 4 or 5 issue series that's coming out, and one artist will continue with that story. But when you start out, you were I think before King Cryptid probably best known for the chair, and you were known for doing a lot of artwork yourself. So did you start out by making like model sheets where you drew
Yeah,
out like this is what King Cryptid like, and then you pass it out to the artists and then they do their own interpretation? Or
yeah, and I like some of that too. We try to stay consistent with a bunch of different things with it, but I also want the artists to give it their own feel of how they would interpret whatever to look the best it can, and then I have final approval over that. So I'm like, yeah, that works with what you're drawing, or that doesn't really work. Make it a little bit more like this. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think seeing people come up with their not necessarily their version of the characters, but like their interpretation through their style. And I think that's an important thing. I don't want the artist to necessarily draw like every other artist I put on there. Otherwise, I would just stick to like the one artist or just get artists who have very similar styles. Um, I'm always looking at the stories I have and going, okay, what kind of artist could really play up the angle I'm looking for, the emotional angle, the character expressions, the character design, the setting. Is this an artist who's really good with cities? Is this an artist that's really good with the forest, nature, that kind of a thing? Is this an artist that could draw kids? I mentioned this before. A lot of artists are terrific when they comes to drawing kids. It's horrifying.
kids and
They just
horses?
look like shrunken adults, shrunken, tiny, wrinkly adults. There's some really great artists out there that when they draw children, though, they have they have so many jarring lines. These kids aged beyond their years. So like for the issues that we have, a lot of the kids in the stories are so far 3, 8, and 11. That's Alex Jovich, and he does a really great job with the variations of the ages, but he does a great job with the kids and having expressions and the dynamics and just the body, the proportions, things like that. Yeah. And, so we're going to have different artists, but they're going to be played to their strengths. I don't want, because that's the thing. If you don't play an artist to their strengths, a very capable artist is going to look horrible on a certain story. So, when I'm putting through different stories like horror or sci-fi or action, adventure, superhero, whatever I'm playing up in the themes or the genre of that story, I want to make sure I'm getting the right artist for it. And so far, so good. I haven't had anybody go, "Wow, that guy was." You don't put him on that kind of story anymore. What was going on there? So we'll see as time goes on. But and also, I'm kind of getting my stable, my little bullpen of King Cryptid artists together of who I want to work with consistently, maybe who I'll bring in once in a while, maybe who'll do like a back cover or whatever, because we get the front and the back covers on the
Mhm.
books. So it's nice getting together, these various artists to kind of not just maybe stick with a character or go with a certain type of story, but to actually be able to have this rotating lineup to help create the series.
So Kanik, getting off the wife subject, asks, do you market to collectors or story followers who read through for ongoing storylines?
I'm always marketing and talking to the reader. I think we've in comics we've put too much emphasis on collectability for collectability's sake. Like if it's collectible because something important happened, that's one thing. You know, if it's collectible because X cover is rarer among the other covers, I hate that. I know there's some people that like that. Good for
Yeah.
them. I'm not going to say like that shouldn't happen, but I'm personally not into that. I'm about like the story and the characters and as things unfold. Certain events occur that make an issue more important and then henceforth more valuable. So it's kind of like a meritocracy of storytelling and character development over this kind of false collector market of the immediacy of making you feel like, oh, this is rarer than the rest just by virtue of they made less of it. And so I don't really play that up. If that happens, that happens. This is independent small press comics as it is, so it's like, I go lower than what I'm doing, and I might as well just make like 2 or 3 and call it a day. So it's one of those, if you're putting out 500 to 1,000 of these, I'm not sitting there going, that's a selling point on the rarity of that. If this ever
Yeah.
blows up, if this the comic book gods bestow upon me that this is the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then yeah, that's gonna be crazy that you only made like 1,000 or 2,000 of these, and people have like that few of it and whatever it is. But I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about how do I tell the best story to the people who are reading this, and I emphasize that.
And if you're into collecting different covers, these all come with 2 covers. So you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So, um, one of Alterna's, let's say, traditional publishing methods was, a lot of times you would take like a graphic novel and you would break it up into like several issues and publish it as almost like a limited series. King Cryptid and Blood Realm are really the two that have become long-staying, continuous series with Alterna. How's that working out for you? Are you liking the way that sort of long, uh, how would you say it? Long form and like no particular ending in sight format works as opposed to publishing smaller collected pieces?
I love it. I love it. I wish we could have done that from the start. We did so many different things with the publishing lineup because that was what the industry dictated. That's what retail dictates. That's what distribution dictates. The format being kind of closer to being either a mini series, a graphic novel trade, that kind of thing, and not really big on the ongoing. The retail buy-in on an ongoing series, even when we were with distribution, it was always significantly less. It was like 30 to 40% less. If you had, because you had to specify what you were doing. Was it a mini series? Was it a one shot? Was it a graphic novel? Was it ongoing? And any time it was ongoing, it didn't matter if the book looked great, sounded great, or had readership. It was always less sales, always. It's kind of like once you start getting further away from that number one in the distribution market, uh, the sales go with it, and it's not across the board, but it's definitely more the rule than the exception.
Mhm.
But I love doing the ongoing. I love milestone numbering. I want to get to number 10 is like the first milestone to me on this. So it's going to be a king size issue. So it's going to be like about 40 pages of story, bigger
Wow.
than the average issue. When we get to like 25, that'll be like the next milestone for me. And we'll do something fun for that, make it another bigger issue. So I want to get to all these milestone numberings. When I got into comics, I'm reading like issue 345 of something or whatever. And it's like, I don't care that it's that.
Mhm.
If anything, if I enjoyed it, like the reason I'm going for it is because the cover speaks to me. The story sounds good because I can see what's going on the cover, and the visual and the writing on the cover, and maybe I look a couple pages or whatever, look pretty solid. And then after I'm done reading it, even when I was a kid, it would be like, oh, okay, this is issue 300 something or whatever. That means if I like this, I have all these other ones I can try to track down. So it was like an exciting thing. It wasn't this daunting thing to me. So at some point in time, like we got intimidated by numbers in the comic industry, and everything should be, we always got to need a number one, gotta have a number one somewhere, and then reboots and retcons and all that other garbage. So this, I love doing the long form ongoing, and some people said, well, can you do like, would you do a Behemoth spinoff? Would you do a Victor Lugo spinoff? All these other characters in the story. Would you do these spinoffs? I was like, I'll just make more King Cryptid, and then maybe we'll get a predominant Behemoth story, a predominant Victor Lugo, a predominant White Mountain Yeti, whatever that might be. Uh, my storytelling is way closer to like the Bronze Age level of
Mhm.
comics. I think it's that compressed storytelling, do a lot with a single issue, have the complete story in an issue, but then also have elements that carry out. And you have a continuity, you have a subplot, you have all these other things that tie together eventually. So if you're a knowledgeable reader, which King Cryptid readers are the most knowledgeable that there are, of course, and also the best looking, that's how it is. They got the best taste. So they're going to go in there and they're going to pick up these books and they're going to catch on to like, oh yeah, that. And then that character name sounds kind of like this other. I wonder if they're connected, and I like the theorizing. I like seeing that happen. Sometime I'll be like, yeah, wink, wink. You want to keep an eye on that. Other times I'll just be like, oh no, maybe a coincidence. It's all a part of the fun of just trying to not give all the secrets away, to have some of those surprises there for the readers when they're finally unveiled.
So Brian asks, Pete, will we ever see an issue from Preston Acevedo? His back cover was awesome, and his art on Testament was amazing. So, are you going to announce here today that he will be doing issues 12 through 20?
Well, 10 to 13 are already we already got artists for those. Preston did a great job, but it's funny because he made that as just like a fun piece to sell at an art auction, and I saw it and I was like, could I have that as a back cover? I'll pay you a little bit of something for it, and you just send me the file. And so he sent that my way, and he did a great job with it. When it comes to artists and things like that, I don't try to plan too far ahead. Like, I have a lot of people that I have in mind, but I don't try to plan too far ahead because schedules change,
Yeah.
things kind of move around, and then something happens, maybe the artist's career takes off or they got their own stuff going on, and then all of a sudden they're not available at all anymore. And that's happened like once or twice with some of the people I've been looking at with different issues for King Cryptid for the first 9. I had to be like, oh well, they're really busy. There's no way they're getting any time for this. And then there's other things too of like, well, do I have the right story for this person? So there's all different things to take into consideration. So I don't like saying yes or no about any of that stuff. Keep it a surprise and a fun thing. So down the line, if you see something and you're like, oh, cool, that person's going to be on that story. Nice.
Yeah, I mean that is one thing that a lot of people don't realize about the economics of doing indie comics is, it's not like when Marvel could have Jim Lee under contract to do X number of issues per year. The margins are so thin. You have to take people when you can get them, and
Yeah.
you also have to hope. Well, it sounds terrible, but in some ways you have to hope that they don't blow up so you can still afford them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You got to play fast and loose with it. And then there's also like, you gotta get people who are gonna be able to hit the deadlines you need them to hit, because as soon as things start going awry, it's like a slow moving train wreck, and it's like everything starts going, and then all of a sudden now you're like a year late or whatever.
yeah.
So there's a lot of different factors that come into play. You got to get people who are easy to work with, they're reliable, you can afford to actually work with them, and there's room in the schedule that they have that they can work with you. And then you got to, of course, number one, you got to have the right story for them. So there's a lot of factors in there. I'd love to say that I could get every single person I want to work with all the time, and it's just not going to happen. But yeah, I don't like to necessarily get into that nitty gritty aspect of things because there's so many moving parts to it.
Yeah. I think perhaps the most important question tonight, King Cryptid swimsuit issue, when?
Well, we are eventually going to have an issue off the coast of Gloucester in Massachusetts.
Oh, nice.
In the water. We got a sea serpent out there. So, if you want to take that to be a swimsuit issue, you can.
So is Broog more of a board shorts or like banana hammock kind of cryptid?
Brug is he's more like what is he? He's just skinny dipping. He's just letting it all fly. You know.
Going commando.
Yeah, he's like swimmer beware. You coming in here, you're gonna get a face full of Brug. Yeah, he's an interesting fella.
So I was wondering now, we had talked before if there are going to be things outside of cryptids. So cryptids are creatures which we don't know exist but may exist, theoretically possible, and they sort of get lumped in with garden variety monsters. But you had also mentioned at one point aliens.
Yeah.
And if I can get this to show, I probably can't see it, but the last line of
The
issue
back cover
8.
to that is kind of almost like a next page in a way.
Mhm.
You know,
Uh,
it's a of what's to come in issue 11 anyway.
so how much do you keep up with the UFO lore, and how much how much of that specifically do you like to incorporate in your work?
I keep up with a unhealthy amount of it. So I'm pretty up to date with a lot of the stuff that's going on and has gone on. And it's the same thing with all of this sort of stuff, whether it's cryptids, mythology. There's going to be all kinds of different things. It's going to be like, ancient cultures. There's all kinds of stuff that's going to work its way into King Cryptid. So I keep up with a fair deal amount of it. and I'll work in some of that here and there with various issues. But with the UFO stuff, is there anything in particular that you're trying to get at?
Well, kind of. Okay, so when I was a kid in the 80s, I was like big into UFO. Every show with Robert Stack that had alien abductions or
Yeah, yeah.
all that stuff, and like books that were at the time talking about Roswell, I was big into those. And then like I kind of just never really kept up with it. And well, Jay Shiro Finney. He's been on your channel a few times. So I was on his channel once years ago, and he had another guest on, and they start talking about aliens, and all of a sudden they're like, well, the reptilians are from SETI Alpha 3 or this, and I'm like, wait, did we find some? How, did we know this? What happened? So somewhere there became like a whole UFO canon, which to me is like taken as like religion, where there's like a whole methodology and storylines and like zero evidence as far as I could tell for any of it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's weird. There's a lot of stuff from various government officials across the world that have said different things at different points in time about various other intelligent life forms. Some of them claim that we're always in constant communication with a handful of them. Some are
mhm.
good, some are not so good. Some have been here, some are here for a lot longer than we've been here. So it's weird, because at the same time, it's always like, well, even when something comes out and it's from the government, I'm like, I don't know how much I believe that.
Exactly.
They've trained me to not believe them. So it's kind of working in their favor because they could be completely telling the truth about all of it. And a discerning person at this point is going to be like, yeah, but they lie about a lot of this other stuff too.
I know.
You
Like,
know,
what other controversies are out this week?
yeah.
You know.
Either way, all I know is you still got to pay your rent, you still got to eat today, and I still got to get King
Yep.
Cryptid issues out to people. But it's an interesting thing because I know there's a lot of people that are like really scared of an alien invasion. Um, Chances are, if there is such a thing that would ever occur, it already has occurred, and it's here already, and we're just living with it. It is the way it is, and a lot of weird stuff in the world, a lot of
Mhm.
odd things, especially in ancient history and even in modern history. I don't know how to I don't know how to put together any of it at this point. I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm fascinated by all of it. It interests me, but I'm not really like that is absolutely what went down. You know?
Um, so like, how do you take such what's your theory on like taking that as a background of like such a fluid mythology or understanding and using that for stories? Like let's say you were doing some religious piece, there would be like thousands of years potentially of books on
Yeah, yeah.
whatever topic, you could sort of pin it down. But since this seems to change like every few years, like who are the reptilians? And then I was reading the other day, there's like some group of race that looks like angels. Like what? When do
Yeah,
they come in?
yeah. There's all kinds. I mean, heck, if you listen to like a lot of the languages on Earth, it starts to
Mhm.
become like kind of apparent that I don't think we're always here. It just seems like at some point in time, people came from somewhere and settled, and that's what derived the language and everything else. Because some of it just sounds just you can make out words and inflection and things like that from certain languages. And then other languages, it's just like you're like, what? How do I spell that? And I'm not trying to make fun. I'm fascinated by how is that something you understand? Because and that has to be just something built in. That has to be something that's not just taught. There just has to be something that it just like a switch goes off. It's like instinctual, and you can understand and learn that language so well. There's so many different things that there's so many similarities across the board, especially if you go back to ancient cultures. So when I'm kind of diving into all this stuff, it's fun to play around with some of it. Some of it I'll stick a bit closer to what's been researched and divulged to say that yes, this is the course of events, this is how they did it, this is whatever. But there's a lot of room to kind of have fun with it. There's a lot of room to get in there and maybe make a sidestep and be like, well, this other faction did this and believed in that, so and kind of have a fiction on top of the maybe fiction, maybe not fiction. Because that's the thing with all this stuff, legend, myth, whatever you want to call it, there's always like some kernel of truth. There's always like something there. And whether that turned and then blew up into something more, or whether it really actually stuck to it and we just think it's so fantastical, there's no possible way that that could be the truth. Like, there's so many things we're just not going to know about. There's so many things that have happened that there's just an oral history of it. There's lost in translation. There's revisions. There's different power structures that came in and then completely destroyed it and turned it into something else. Whatever it may be, like every single thing that we think about with this stuff has been so altered and kind of story told,
Hmm.
and really built off of maybe something that happened. Because even the idea of like ruling by divine right,
Hmm.
imagine you go in the grocery store one day and someone's like, "Hello, people. I am here to rule you. I have divine right. Like I have descended from dragons.
The
Unless
cucumbers
there's
are
a
mine.
dragon next to this dude, you're gonna be like, this guy's nuts."
Yep.
So at some point in time, it just seems like something somewhere, someone did something or something occurred or whatever had happened to make people think like, wow, these people are like, they're above us. Like they know something, they have something, they have some kind of power, some kind of whatever, for us to think like they should rule. They should rule over us. They're more powerful, they're more superior than us. Like that's a weird, consistent thing across a lot of civilizations over millennia. So, I'm fascinated again. I'm by all of it. I'm fascinated by it, and I'll take little bits in this and that, whatever, put in the story. But it's all funny to me how people will be like, "That's exactly how it went down," and I'm like, "We don't really know that, though. You can't say that. You can't see like that's exactly it. Like maybe, yeah, maybe. I don't know. The truth is like there's a lot of things like we just kind of take a really good guess, and a lot of it we go, yeah, that sounds plausible based on the way that we've seen things in the world within our lifespan. But there's so many things, obviously, where we're like, I mean, we're all technically one step away from just living it as a cargo cult and people being like,
Yeah.
I put together this pile of sticks. Why don't I have Wi Fi? Why isn't the Wi-Fi getting to my Leaf computer? It's like, yeah, maybe you can make it look like, maybe you can make some clay and fashion it to look like it. You draw your little screen out. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's going to work because you don't know what's on the inside. And there's a lot of technology that's like that, where like, so if an alien craft crashed down or whatever, maybe you can figure out how to reverse engineer some of it, but you don't know how or why or all the little bells and whistles and intricacies of the whole thing. Like we would never know. We'd have to literally have someone come down and explain it to us. We'd have to have somebody show us. Because that's the other part. It's
Yeah.
like someone, if you go back far enough, it's like, who showed you how to do this? You can't just be like, I learned it from watching you. Okay, well, then who did you watch? It's got to be like,
Yeah.
let's go back more and more and more. Because it isn't going to be like, well, that big T-Rex taught me how to make this, big fire here. Like something along the way, some divine spark, some higher authority, some ancient alien. I have no idea. But it's like if you keep going back and back and back, it seems like it's a really interesting, almost unanswerable question. And it's fun
Hmm.
at this point in time to kind of hypothesize.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Oh, it's a good question. Will we get a Claremont level space adventure in King Cryptid one day between the Anunnaki and reptilian people?
Well, not maybe necessarily the Anunnaki and reptilian people, but um, there's definitely going to be. King Cryptid he branches out. He has a long history. He's like 500 plus years old, and he wasn't always in New England. So I'll say that. So there's a lot of stuff to touch upon with him being at various places of the world over the course of the 500 or so years. Other than that, though, we're going to eventually see him go off world. He's going to have different kinds of adventures to this place, that place, the other place. I don't want to be too specific and spoil too many things. But there's a lot of different moving parts to the story and to the cosmic level that things can go to in King Cryptid. But it always kind of goes back to his little corner of the world, his little neck of the woods. And that's the heart of the story, is that he's just one dude trying to do as much as he can in the time that he has, because he doesn't know why the hell he's even immortal at this point. He doesn't know why he can't really die. Like, he can die, but he still kind of can't really die. There's still ways to revive him, resurrect him, bring him back. So it's like, as far as he knows, he's been around for 500 something years, and he's seen a lot of loss in his time, but he doesn't know, like, do I have a purpose to fulfill? So he is trying to make the best of it and do as much as he can.
Makes sense. All right.
Which is what I
So
think we all try to do.
hopefully, yeah. Although, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe people should go through and read issues 6 to 9. And you might find kind of sort of some hints to where that's going.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first 9 issues are now out. I'm almost at the halfway point of fulfillment on 5 to 9. And then 10 to 13 are being made. So we're in like the creation production process of that, but we're still trying to get those funded. So we're at 75% funded on those. And once we do hit funding, we can really hit the ball. We can really get the ball rolling on this and hit the ground running, because I got a lot of stories to tell, and I'm hoping that people are there for them. So we'll see. There's a lot of people that have to still get their stuff. So I'm suspecting that a great deal of them are waiting patiently, hopefully, and I'm doing my best. I'm getting like 75 to 80 packages or so out a week. I got to be really careful with a lot of them. There's people who got a lot of different things. There's people who I also got to cross reference all the Alterna site and everything else, and make sure that I'm getting everyone all their stuff together, because the campaign is on both the Alterna site and on Indiegogo. And then on Sunday, on the 9th, I'm going to be launching a campaign for 1 to 9, just the issues, on Fund My Comic and on Kickstarter. And
Oh, nice.
that's going to fulfill after all this is fulfilled. So no one that backs those is going to get anything until everyone that already previously backed is going to get their stuff. But I'm experimenting with that, seeing how it goes. I've had people asking for me to put that on there, so I'm like, okay, I guess we'll do that. It's already on the Alterna site, it's already on Indiegogo, but I've still had people asking about Kickstarter and Fund My Comic, and they're like, oh, if it was on there, I'd back it. I'm like, all right, well, we'll see. So yeah, that'll be that.
Yeah, I am curious how that works out. I think I don't know. It's hard to say with Fund My Comic. I like the potential for the platform.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say it has not peaked. Um, I think in the future, after some more years of good success, I think it'll be a lot more popular. One of the things I don't like about Indiegogo is you have to drive all the traffic to their site. Like they're not
yeah.
doing
It's
anything to bring things in,
yeah,
which is different with Kickstarter, which makes me wonder how King Cryptid will do there, because they have like their own ecosystem. Like when I launched my campaign, I started following a few people on there, And there is one guy who buys like he backs like 4 projects every day. It's insane. I don't know how he must be super rich or something. But there literally are people who are like, okay, what's all the new comics today? I want this one. I want this one. I want this one.
Yeah, let's
So,
hope. It'll be the first time I'm putting King Cryptid on either platform, and it'll be the second time I've had something on Fund My Comic. We had Alterna
hmm,
in 2023. It did okay. But I didn't, to be perfectly honest, I didn't push it tremendously. And it's a different campaign than a book. And then Kickstarter, I haven't used Kickstarter since like, I don't know, 2017 or something like that. So it's been a long time. I had to make like a whole new account because I'm like, I don't even want to bother with the previous. Like, I have no idea. I know that when I
yeah.
used to back it, it's like, I don't know, I'm missing like 20 something different perks I was supposed to get over the past 10 or 12 years from various Kickstarter people. So it's just one of those
Yeah.
like weird, whatever. Make a new account, put the campaign up, and we'll see how it goes. And that's all I can say. It's just an experiment, and I'm doing it mostly just because I've had people asking. I had enough people asking that I figured I should probably put it up there. We'll see how it
Yeah.
goes, and that'll be that.
And excuse me, Brian. Pete, did going on other large comic streaming channels have a noticeable effect when funding? This channel right here, it has the best effect of all of them. So I don't even know why anybody goes anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, is there really a channel bigger than this one?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exclusive. That's what we call it, Pete. Exclusive.
exactly. And I mean, everything helps. It always does help. I always found that when it came to if you're actually doing trying to raise money on a project or something like that, I hate the shows. I hate to host these, and I hate to be on them where it's just let's just look at the campaign and
Mm,
explain every perk to me and to the
yeah.
audience. I'm like, okay, we could have a conversation instead. Is it? No, you're here to just explain and sell things. So I hate hosting that. I hate being on that. I think like the best ones are the conversational type, and then it's just like, hey, go to here and check it out if you want. Uh, but it helps when it's like a one-on-one scenario like this. I think if it's like a group
Yeah.
setting thing, that doesn't really tend to help. It really there's so many factors with it. It's another one of those questions where I'm like, yeah, it really depends. It really depends, like whose channel you're on, what you're talking about, how engaging is the conversation, all that kind of stuff. There's so many variables to it. You could be on like a huge channel, and if the whole conversation it just makes no sense. It doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing. It's not engaging at all. You're not going to get anybody that really backs. It's going to just turn into like, okay, well, we know about that guy. The next guy to come along, let's see who that is. But there's so many things that go into this. So, and I don't. That's the thing. I don't go on to shows anymore trying to be like, oh, I hope I make some money tonight going on this show. I'm just looking to have a fun conversation and a good time, and talk to the people in the chat too. That's pretty much it.
So while we're conversating, tell us a little bit about King Cryptid 10 to 13. Now, I know that the events of the Blood Moon crossover are going to happen at some point. Do they happen
Yeah, Blood
between?
Moon
Mhm.
takes place between 9 and 10.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
when
people
we
would have Blood Moon first, and then they'll have 10 to 13.
so when we get to 10, King Cryptid's going to be dealing sort of with the aftermath of that, and
Yeah,
um,
10 specifically, because there's something that goes down in the Blood Moon graphic novel crossover, and that's between King Cryptid and the Blood Realm series. There's something that happens there where when King Cryptid gets back to Earth, spoiler alert, he obviously gets back to Earth. The series continues. Um, he's caught between dimensions, like his mind and his heart, his essence is caught between dimensions, because that's the thing is he's transported through a different dimension to go to Mordrin in Blood Realm. And when he comes back, there's a part of him that is caught there, and a part of there that comes back with him,
Mm.
and that's what gives birth to Killer King. Killer King is kind of like this demonic manifestation of a lot of the feral. I don't want to give too much, but I'm trying to use my words carefully here because there's things in the story. There's kind of like it's like a demonic manifestation of a lot of the evil, a lot of the bad, a lot of the darker side of King Cryptid, especially because he is a cursed being. He used to be a human being, and he was
Hmm.
cursed with his own kind of demonic presence. And then that moonstone that he has, that he got after about 100 or so years, he got it from this shaman, Black Moon, gave him this cosmic moonstone, and it restored his humanity to be prevalent, but it just kind of quieted the demonic feral side of King Cryptid. But he can't turn back to a human, nothing like that. But because of this moonstone, he's kind of his powers and his feral side it kind of is tapped into the phases of the moon, and the moonstone is powered by the moon's light, and it has to be specifically our moon with specifically our sun. So blood moon, there's things that happen because it's not our moon, it's not our sun that shines on that world. It's different. It kind of taps into something that he didn't know he had, because how would he'd never left earth prior to that. So when he comes back, there's stuff that he deals with, and a nightmarish world starts to take place because of Killer King, who is kind of running around more or less. Like he's living in the subconscious of King Cryptid, and he's running around as King Cryptid sleeps. And eventually the
Mm.
worlds collide, and King Cryptid awakes to a nightmarish world around him, fashioned by Killer King. So he's got to figure out a way to get his world restored, take care of this Killer King guy, and also try to literally battle his own demons. So that's why we need this king-sized issue. We need more pages to tell this story, and Kier Covington's going to be the artist on it, and I'm going to be coloring
Nice.
it. So I color both issue 10 and 12. 11
Oh,
has Alex Jovich as the artist. 12 has Bill Mouse, and 13 we see Christian Rossi come back, and that's going to be predominantly a Behemoth issue. We kind of see what Behemoth has really been up to the past 12 issues. We saw him a lot in issue 1. We see him a little bit in one of the new issues, one of 5 to 9. Don't want to spoil it just yet. And then we see him really in 13. We see a lot of kind of his origin, essentially. And then it's a very tragic, horrific origin, and we see what Victor Lugo has been doing to play his part in that. So there's a lot of stuff there. Behemoth, that what he finds out, it sends him in a blind rage, and he wants to kill King Cryptid. And so some people
very
might be
cool.
going like, why does he want to kill King Cryptid? Because they were buddies after issue 1. But the things that he finds out, it makes him want to go beeline right for King Cryptid, not Victor Lugo. He'd get to him, but he wants to go right for King Cryptid. So it's like, well, what happened? Why him? And we'll
Uh,
find out.
So if Killer King is sort of the evil otherworld manifestations of King Cryptid, goatee or no goatee?
No goatee. He's
Oh,
color scheme is kind of a little bit of a different offset. He's all blood soaked red. Um, he's got a paler bluish face, and he doesn't have a moonstone. He's a bit bigger. He's about a foot bigger than him, and
oh,
he's about 100 pounds or so heavier than him. So he's a bigger, stronger, more powerful enemy, and he gets his power derived from the sun. So he's kind of like Bizarro King Cryptid in some ways. So
very cool.
and there's going to be different elements here as to how King Cryptid's going to have to figure out how to tackle this guy. But by doing so, he's going to have to learn some things about himself, because he doesn't remember a lot. He doesn't remember a whole hell of a lot, actually, about his time as a human being and the process that occurred to him. It kind of is like a lot of that got cut off. He has glimpses, he has feelings about his past life, but it's not like he's got a clear cut image. He remembers his name because that's what even Black Moon said, that this is your name. This is the legend of you. Crowan, Krowan. People call him King Cryptid because it's like his silhouette and things like that. And over the course of time, it developed into like, oh yeah, he looks kind of kingly. He's a cryptid, yeah, King Cryptid, like Bigfoot. Oh, he's got a big foot. So it's very descriptive, but it's not necessarily like who he is. He's not king of the cryptids, even though some people think he is. There's lore about him where they do think he is some kind of kingly creature. But with Killer King especially, we're gonna learn a little bit more about King Cryptid and a part of him that is really buried within, and he's gonna have to embrace that to defeat Killer King.
So Jam wants to know, when writing cryptids that may have already been depicted in other media, how hard is it to put your own spin on them?
Well, it's not too hard. It's not too hard because it's like there's a lot of lore with these cryptids, but at the same time, there's not really a whole hell of a lot of personality outside of like animalistic qualities. You don't really go like, oh, Bigfoot. Yeah, he's always sarcastic. That guy tells corny jokes. You don't
Yeah.
know what Bigfoot. It's like, okay, well, he's in these situations. It's aggressive. The situation. It's very animalistic kind of description. So it's kind of easy prescribing a personality to these creatures, but I also don't deal with a lot of cryptids that we already know exist. It's there's these derived, like Behemoth is derived from the DNA of the Mothman. So
Mhm.
that says that, okay, the Mothman exists in this world, but Behemoth is not Mothman. King Cryptid might look like an amalgamation of a bunch of different cryptids, but he's not Bigfoot with a winged cape. It's very different with all these things. So it's easy kind of coming up with personalities for them, even the werewolves in issue 7. It's easy kind of coming up with different things to fit certain aspects. And certain things are very familiar with the lore and the mythology of certain creatures and characters, and then other things it'll be like, all right, play what we'll play that up on its head.
And so Brian had asked, no black and white this time around?
10 to 13, all color, no black and white. Yep.
So with the new campaign for 10 to 13, so we can get it on Indiegogo, we can get it on Alterna.com. What's the best for you? Where should people go?
Alternacomics.com, I would strongly recommend people go there, only because you can sign up for the newsletter, you get a coupon. You can also sign up for Alterna Rewards, that's free. You get points every time you purchase. You can also end up having like a wish list. You can have your order history. You can have everything all set up in one spot. There's like close to 400 items or something around that on that site. So you can kind of make it a one-stop shop for everything, as opposed to running around to all the different crowdfunders. There's so many great things to discover on Alterna. So, not just King Cryptid, there's Blood Realm, there's Red Koi, Tinseltown, Unit 44. It came out on a Wednesday. People love that anthology. And then there's a couple of graphic novels that we still have. We predominantly were graphic novel publishing for a long time, and now we only have like a couple. We're going to start bringing graphic novels back again this year, starting with Blood Realm Volume 1. That giant has been sold out for a while, so we're just going to start making graphic novels instead. So we got all kinds of different things you could pick up. I really recommend going to alternacomics.com. But wherever you guys want to go, whatever you prefer. If you're like, nah, I just want to stick to Indiegogo. If you're on there, I'll stay on there. We have people that are like that.
Yeah.
Just they never buy anything on the Alterna site. But if we put up an Indiegogo campaign, they back every single one and they get like a ton of stuff. So if it's not on Indiegogo, they never get it. Um, so it's everyone's got their preference. That's why I figured too with Kickstarter and Fund My Comic, it's kind of turning into like this is the store I shop at.
Hmm.
If your book isn't at that store, then I'm not getting it. But if it is, then I'll get it. So some people are like that with these various platforms. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I honestly think part of it is like they have a credit card stored in there, and it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I just have to pick one click. And then I do know that some people like the veneer of safety. Um, Not that they're necessarily saying that you are a bad dude, but with smaller sites, third party sites, even my own, people sometimes wonder like, oh, is something going to happen to my credit card information, this or that, and they sort of prefer the larger sites, which
Yeah. Whatever the
whatever.
reason is, I get it. But
So
yeah, so
mhm.
that's why I appreciate when people tell me though, if they're like, "Oh, well, if it was over here, I would get it." It's like, hey, whatever your reason is, that's what your reason is. But thanks for letting me know, and if I can get on there, I will.
Have you thought about going either even further with distribution, not necessarily to back to like whatever replaces diamond?
I was
Um,
gonna say we can't really go back to Diamond.
but what about something like an Amazon?
Amazon is it'd be nice, but at the same time, I think it would be a nightmare.
Yep.
I don't think they could handle shipping out comics, and people would really appreciate getting them the way they would most likely be shipping them.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
graphic novels is one thing, but I think
yeah.
comics you'd have to be like, okay, can you guys have these bagged and boarded and ship them in a nice mailer? Not
No.
just, I mean, there's things I get it from Amazon sometimes. They put the thing in there or whatever it is, and then they have like a bubble wrap garnish, just like a little, just on top. Like, all
And
right,
then,
that'll
you know,
protect it.
and then other times you get like a giant box that's wrapped in bubble wrap that has another box inside with bubble wrap
Yeah,
that
or
has
like
an
they
envelope
ship
that
it.
has your key ring.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or like they ship it in the product box, and you're like, I didn't really want the action figure to be shipped without a box protecting it.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
stuff
and
like that. There's weird things that happen.
I didn't want my neighbors to know what I'm buying either.
Yeah,
If you got
well,
like
yeah, they could.
electronics or something coming to your house.
Oh well, that's a whole other deal. But I've contacted Lunar. Um, I used to talk to the people who run DCBS,
Mhm.
Cameron Merkler and his wife, and we were on friendly terms. But I think they're very busy, and so I haven't gotten any responses from them. I've contacted them twice, and no responses. So I'm not really like that's not really like a big part of my game plan of, oh god, I get back to distribution somehow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because it was a nightmare for more reasons than one. But if we ever go down that road, we go down that road. The comics are kind of set up so that they could easily get acclimated back into distribution. I got the proper barcoding and everything on there already for them. But we'll see. I'm not really necessarily planning on it. It's more just like, all right, if that happens and it works out, we could do it.
Mhm.
But right now, I'm really happy going direct to everybody.
Nice. Yeah, so I did want to ask you about the going back to graphic novels. So now you mentioned Blood Realm, um, and I assume maybe at some point we'll see King Cryptid in there. Are you planning on going back to older series that Alterna has published and going back to graphic novels, or are these only sort of projects that are going forward?
No, well, I want to put out eventually like a Mr. Crypt omnibus. I mean, it's
Mm,
a rights issue with things. So it's like I still have the
yeah.
rights for Mr. Crypt, still have the rights for the actual Roger. Want to put the actual Roger to a graphic novel also. And then even if a series gets discontinued, if the creator still wants to work with me to do like the reprints or remastered edition or a graphic novel compilation, so even if they're not making any more new issues or at least not putting them out through Alterna, if they still want to kind of work with me for stuff and keep it open ended like that, that's fine with me. It hasn't ever really worked out that way before, but I'm hoping that if it was to come to that with the current group that I have, that we could do something to move forward together in some capacity. But I'm really focused on, and I see there's a question in the chat too about like new series and things like that. I'm really focused on what we have and what I'm doing. Putting out new series, looking for new talent. I shut down submissions about 2 years ago because I went a whole year without accepting one. I'm finding that there's a lot of people in comics that if I want to publish them, they don't need me, so they can do things on their own. And I'm going to be the last person on earth to say you need a publisher to succeed in comics, because I didn't do it that way. So that would be really weird for me to tell someone that they do. But the mindset that I want doesn't necessarily need me in the picture. And that's fine, because I got into comics to make comics. The publishing side of it was like, I guess I could try to help people out too, and we could all maybe help each other. But I wasn't like, I want to publish comics. I have no stories of my own. I have no artistic inclination. I'm not creative. I just like comics and want to kind of put them out there. I got into comics to make comics. So I'd rather have that take up most of my time than being the person who's like, let me sink more of my time and money into someone who probably doesn't deserve it. And that's been, unfortunately, the vast majority of people I've published over the 19 years. I'd say probably like 90% of who I've published, I look back and I'm like, I really shouldn't have put so much time and money into that person. It's like, so I look back and it's not that the work was bad, it's that the drive wasn't there, or that they look at a creator-owned publisher and expect a traditional publishing publisher. And it's a whole different animal. You have to be like your own brand. I'm here to help. I'm not here to like do for you. If that's the way it is, then it's like, all right, well, books are going to be like $7 to $8 a piece. I'm going to take a way bigger cut on things because I got people to pay then that have to do all these, because I can't do literally everything and then not make any money, which is, what I spent the majority of comics publishing doing, was kind of spending a lot of money I didn't have on people who kind of took it and then ran with it. I mean, when we were in distribution, there were times where I'd go, why didn't you promote your book at all when it was in previews? I told you had to do this and this and the other thing. They're like, well, I thought it was in preview, so that was enough. I was like, if that was the case, why would I have told you to promote it? Like, well, they canceled it because only 50 orders came in. Because like you need to tell people about your book. And they're like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing everything else and still telling people about your book. I'm like, but people, when a publisher tells someone about the book, it's like, oh yeah, okay, you told them about the book, that's great. When the creator tells people about the book, it's like, oh, this person cares about their book. It's a publisher, it's like, yeah, it's your job to send out a press release and say, hey, we got stuff coming out, and that's the run of the mill stuff. But when you see someone who makes it and they care about it and they talk about it and they get out there and they're excited about what they're making and they contact people and they let them know, it's a whole different vibe. And there's a lot of creators over the years that just never got that. They thought I was like shirking responsibilities. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm trying to help you now and for the future, when one day you're not at Alterna anymore and people don't just associate me with your book, because we've had that happen over the years too. And then people leave and they go on and they never take an audience with them because they never built an audience. They just kind of built my audience because I was the one that looked like I was making the book. And it's like, I'm not supposed to be like Stan Lee of Alterna. I'm supposed to be like, hey, this is how you do it. This is what works for me. If you got a different way you want to do something, then you do it. But you have to do something. And that's kind of a rough lesson that I've had to learn over the years about people, and that other people have had to learn over the years. And I don't know if they've learned it or not, but that's why I'm not rushing to publish anyone anymore. I'm like, yes, the world has changed with publishing.
Mhm.
People have so much access to various things now. They don't need someone like me to come in and say, "Oh, do this, do that, do the other thing. That looks good. This doesn't look good." No, you could just go and do it. You could just go and do it, and then I can go and do whatever I got to do. And whoever I have right now that wants to be here, that can be here, and that it makes sense for them to be here, they'll be here until it doesn't make sense anymore, until people aren't really benefiting from that, and then that's just how it goes. But I'm not really in the mood of like, oh no, I'm really gonna go in there and scout for people and this and that and what. It's not. It's a whole different thing now.
Yeah. Um, Brian asks, Red Koi graphic novel, and can you give us a rundown of the active titles?
Oh yeah. Okay. So Red Koi graphic novel. Right now, Tyler's working on finishing up the rest of the series. So he's got like I think 5 or 6 more issues to go.
Oh,
And I think he's done with like 1 or 2.
oh,
So
nice.
he's got like 3 or 4 issues left. And then so once he's done with that, we'll put the issues out so everybody can have like the 12 or 13 issue series, however it is he wants to do it. And then that'll be released as a graphic novel, like a big collection. And that'll be over the course of the next couple of years or whatever. As far as the other question goes with the rundown of current active titles, right now we've got, of course, King Cryptid. It came out on a Wednesday, and this is what the issues are on. So King Cryptid is currently funding 10 to 13. Uh, it came out on a Wednesday, is on issue 21. 22 is going to be coming out eventually soon. We got Unit 44, that's on issue 10. Blood Realm is on technically it's on issue 18. He's got to fulfill that. I got to get that printed, and that'll all happen after King Cryptid's all set and done. So he's got a lot of issues for his series, Rob. And then we got Tinseltown, which is right now the second mini series is done. I'm still uncertain with what's going on with the third. It's up in the air with that, but I consider that still an active title. And then we've got Red Koi, which I just talked about how the update is with that. So we've got like 7 or so titles uh, in terms of what's active, what's out there, what's being worked on. And, hopefully it stays that way, but things change. That's the one thing that I've seen over 19 years is things change.
Uh, Jan wants to know, will graphic novels be like traditional trade paperbacks or more like Alterna Giants?
No, they'd be more like traditional graphic novels. They'd be the size of our single issues. In the past, we've done like 6 by 9. In the early days, the sizing was all over the place because distribution kept being like, "Try this size, maybe this size will work. That size, And we were kind of just like, "I'm like 22. I'm like, whatever, you guys know more than me." We had book market distribution, we had diamond distribution, and both of them would say this size works, that size works. This go for that, try that. And eventually it was just like, I'm just doing 6 by 9, 6 by 9. And so we just did 6 by 9 for the longest time. But now with this relaunch sort of thing with the graphic novels, we'll just do them the size of the Alterna issues and then leave it that way. And it'll have like a nice cardstock cover, and it'll have like a silk coated interior. It won't be newsprint interior because for some weird reason, making a newsprint graphic novel trade is almost double the price of making the silk coated trade, because it's you got to go through web press, you got to have like a whole huge amount, and then it's just like a beast to of an undertaking. Whereas for the silk coated with the nice cover and everything else, like the technology on that stuff has upgraded so much that you don't have to do a whole ton of them, and so you can still keep costs relatively low and inventory kind of low too, and still make a really nice book. So we'll have like this upgraded kind of premium paper stock thing going on for the trades and graphic novels coming out.
Nice. So you mentioned, it has been a while since you've taken submissions for books being published, but are you still taking submissions for It Came Out on a Wednesday?
Oh yeah, yeah. We still take submissions for that. Yeah, so you can go right to the Alterna site and go to the. It came out on a Wednesday. Title drop down, and then you can click on that, and there's a submission part for that. So yeah, we're still taking short story submissions, and those are between 1 to 10 pages.
Nice. Um, all right. Well, you have been up quite a long time, I think. Um, so pretty much focusing on uh, the titles that you have, getting the graphics novels going. Anything else we can expect to see from Alterna coming up?
Well, okay, so the remastered books, the first wave should be going to print sometime this month and then fulfillment shortly after that. And then we'll have the wave 2 up, and then we have the Hall of Fame second class for the 2025 year. We've got 4 of those. That's probably going to launch sometime around April or so. We got Rob's Blood Realm issues 15 to 18. That's going to start fulfillment probably like a month and a half. And then we've got Blood Moon fulfilling around the summertime. And we've got another King Cryptid campaign in the fall. Once 10 to 13 fulfill. So I want to have like probably 4 issues again for the next King Cryptid campaign. So we'll do like 14 to 17. And I think Rob wants to do another Blood Realm campaign this year too for like 3 more issues, I think he said.
Wow. So he's really moving on those.
So yeah, he's gonna get to issue 20 this year, which is gonna be cool for him. I hope he's got something fun planned in some way. He probably does. But yeah, so we want to get that Blood Realm graphic novel out this year as well. Maybe the actual Roger graphic novel too. It depends what kind of time I'm looking at in terms of getting whatever going. And then just the usual stuff that we do every year around like September. We do Alternaween and things like that. So we'll see.
Nice.
A lot of stuff going on. That's why it's like, something new. I'm like, man, I don't even have like a moment to breathe.
All right. Well, thanks for coming by, everyone. If you haven't yet, sign up on Yang Yan Zhao's channel at Yang Yan Zhao 4 on both YouTube, and follow me over on Twitter for my witty takes on whatever I'm taking on. So we've got 2 more guests this week talking about gaming. Next week we will be back with talking comics and probably gaming. We'll see who actually nails down a time for next week. But
Yeah, see how tough that is, even for just something like this, right?
it's like the bane of my existence.
Herding the cats, not herding, not like herding them, like HURHERD.
But thanks for coming, Pete. Hopefully we'll have you back on before too long.
Yeah, sure. It's always good. Always good being on here. Thank you, man.
And we'll see you guys tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock. Shark Ninjas.